So today we are going to meet a gentleman who's been in the wholesaling business for 1 year, not even one full year, and is on track to do over $335,000. And real excited because Omar has done not only traditional wholesale deals, but he also has some novation deals in the works. So real excited for today's guest. Omar, how are you doing, my man?
Thanks, Todd. I'm doing great. I can't believe I'm on this show. I manifested this thing about 6 months ago, and boom, I'm here
Awesome.
talking to you
Well,
today.
you
So I
you
feel
you
amazing.
manifested and then reached out and took action, and so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's,
So
it's an
Omar, but how
honor.
do you pronounce your last name, by the way?
Tenweir.
Tenware. All right. So Omar, tell us a little bit about how you. Obviously, everyone wants to hear how you're generating deals today. We're going to get to that in a second. But how did you get involved in real estate? What were you doing before you got in? If you had to summarize this in 30 seconds or less, quick bullet points, and then what pushed you into real estate?
Great, yeah. So Todd, I mean, my typically my background is, I went to college, got my business degree, worked for corporate world for about a few years. It was great, but kind of realized it wasn't really for me. So I went out, ventured out on my own, started a couple of businesses, failed in few, did really well in some, and then ended up owning a restaurant business, and that taught me a lot working for yourself and putting the time in day out. And my brain was always thinking, man, there's got to be a better way.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of down times during the restaurant business, so I started reading a lot of content, podcasts, listen to Robert Kiyosaki, and that just really opened something in my head. And that really got me into the pursuit of learning real estate from a very different angle since last
So
two
let me
three
stop you. So
years.
you're in the restaurant business. Obviously, something's wrong because you're in there. I think you said you were selling pizzas, right? So you're selling pizzas.
That's
You're
right.
putting the pepperoni on the cheese, and you're like, "Hey, there's got to be more, right?" You're reading, Rich Dad Poor Dad. What was that? What was itching at you, Omar?
It's interesting, Todd. I've had during this time, I've had three. I'm blessed to have three beautiful kids, and every time I go to work, and I'm like, this, I can't do this thing for too long. I go into, I had a hernia surgery, and literally 3 days back, I'm in the restaurant. I'm grinding, and I'm thinking there's got to be an easier way to do this. And I think that around that time, I started learning about e-commerce, what e-commerce is, how fast you can scale a business. And you see a lot of people talking about their successes. And that really got me into the pursuit of, well, let me see how complicated this thing is. So I educated myself first. I went out, learned what this thing is, and I figured out, okay, well, I can maybe do this, but hey, Robert Kiyosaki's talking all about real estate. And one fact that I've learned is that there's more millionaires that come out of real estate than any other industry. So that was a very interesting fact. And I'm a very kind of say I'd say um, contrarian mindset. So I didn't want it to always buy a property with a typical bank loan, and then I figured out, man, there's ways to make money. Like wholesaling is really, I mean, you've been doing it for a very long time, so that really unlocked something in my head. And I said, well, that sounds easy. Like lock up a deal at a low price, go out and find a buyer, and boom, you take an assignment, and that's pretty straightforward. So that really was a turning point while I was in the restaurant industry. That really kind of steered me to this direction.
So Omar, now you're here. You had the itch. You took action. Tell us how you did your first deal because everyone's got to have their pain, and you actually had a physical pain with your hernia,
Oh,
right?
oh,
So that was it, right? And you're like, I don't want to actually physically go into the restaurant. So tell us, you decided what to do. How did you get that first deal?
yeah, yeah. So it's really interesting, and it goes against all the misconceptions that we have. My first deal, I never saw the house, never met the buyer, never met the seller. to this date, I don't even know where this property is. Like, I know the address of it, but I've never been to this house. So first thing what I did was I networked. I networked like crazy. I met everybody I could. I made a list of people that, there's newcomers in this city, there's new investors, new wholesalers. So I went out, coffee, drinks, whatever that that it takes for me to understand what their needs are. So one thing I learned in real estate was, try to solve somebody's problem and you'll get rewarded really well. So I go back and I network with this local wholesaler who's doing tremendously well, and we're still doing deals together up to this date. So I met him and I said, "Hey, you know what? I'm new to this business and I'm trying to connect, seeing if what kind of deals are out there." And he said, "Well, you know what? I have something that I'm looking for a buyer on this currently." So I said, "Okay, let me see what I can do." I get the address, and then I had another gentleman that I go and I talked to him. I said, "Hey, I have a deal through a partner. What do you think?" And this guy said, "Well, guess what? I think I have a buyer at this price." So we had a spread. It wasn't huge. Like, I think we did about 20,000 on the first deal. But the most amazing part was that the speed was amazing. Within I think about 3 to 4 days, we were able to assign that contract. So we had this deal locked in for 340, and it was a vacant property, had no locks on it. And it was great because you had no, homeowner in the house. It's a lot easier for the buyers to go in, do the inspection, and whatnot. So the first gentleman, I said, "Okay, I might have a buyer," and they gave me their price. I added a little bit of the spread. And then I told the wholesaler on my end, and I said, "Hey, you know what? I have this property at this price. I would like to make about 10, 20 grand on this." And then we were pretty honest from day one. So he said, "Okay, you know what? Let's make 10 each. And I'm going to go out and I have a buyer, a cash buyer, who will take it for 360." And it was an infill deal where it was a development play. So it was a lot easier. The buyer went in, they went in to see the house. I wasn't there. I just basically literally coordinated the
So
whole.
let me slow down. When you said infill, right? I'll just back up for a second. Infill means that you can actually just build another house fairly easily right next to the existing house. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Okay.
So infill is in Calgary. It's just a zone for duplex property, but currently it's just an old house sitting
Okay.
on a lot.
Great. Okay, understood. So you basically wholesale this building opportunity, right? You had it under contract. You sold it. So what was the spread on this deal?
20,000.
20,000. By the way, this is in Canada.
This is in Canada, so the mechanics are completely different.
But either way, here's, let me get back to that. That's a simplicity. Basically, you found somebody who had a problem. Obviously, you worked with another wholesaler, you networked there, you had it under contract, you basically moved the contract and you made a $20,000 spread.
Simple as that.
Right.
That's
so
right.
I always tell people, look, if you get overwhelmed by the mechanics, if you're like, "Oh my gosh, the paperwork and what's infill and what's schmilfill and this, and how do I know if I've got a deal like this?" No, rewind it. Okay. Find somebody with a problem, get the property under contract, find a buyer for that contract, and make the spread. Great job,
right.
Omar.
That's right.
Awesome.
That's right. That's right. And one thing I should add, I think one thing I really focused very initially on, and I think it goes out for a lot of people who are starting out, whether they're on the first deal or the second or third, is there's some technicality on, let's say, there's a lot of factors that we don't know. But what we know right ahead of us is real estate is, I feel like it's a numbers game. You got to know at what price you can disposition it or you can sell it. And then you work back your wholesale formula. And then you just got to know at what number you're going to be at the offer. So whether it's through another wholesaler or you're direct with a seller, once you know that how to comp it, how to give an offer in today's market, and that's where you work on your spread. And really, it just becomes a mathematical equation. So that's what I did. I didn't know how to go out and look for buyers. I didn't know how to go out and look for sellers. I just knew that this is the formula. This is the property. I have this guy who has this property. All I got to do is just fill in the gap here with the buyer. So I was blessed to learn it from, a lot of different sources, YouTube, yourself, Todd. I mean, it's amazing how many times I've seen your videos over and over. So that really solidified in something in my head, and really that gave me the courage to just go out and take an action. And I
Right.
said, well, what's the worst could happen? Somebody could say no. I'll just move
So
on.
did you find out what your buyer would pay before you solidified that agreement with your seller?
No, so the property was under a contract prior for me to go out and look for a buyer.
Great,
So it was
understood.
already under a contract.
Got it.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm going to tell people, because you said something that I coach a lot on, and you're saying, hey, it's a numbers game. Well, it is a numbers game, which is really, really important. But the other part of this is you cannot get stuck in the paralysis of analysis, right? Like, oh my gosh, what can I pay? Because I can tell you, I've been in this game since 2001. And people are like, comp my property. And by the way, I can pull comps and I can pull an estimate of what we can pay. But I can tell you, I've never been exactly right on what a property have sold for, right? If I've actually stuck it out to the open market, right? If I've sold it to a buyer and I gave them the price and they said, okay, obviously those prices matched, right? But you have to get out there and make offers when you're meeting with sellers. Obviously, you found something that was already under contract, another wholesaler, and you sold it to an end buyer. So while the numbers are important, right, you can't let them get you stuck because you don't know them. And so one of the things that I recommend is that everyone gets a good broker on their team, right? You don't have to pay them up front, but they can really help you with values, right? And tell you what those end buyers will pay. Okay, awesome job. So you got that first check, you're excited, you've moved forward. Tell us a little bit about what your business looks like today. I mean, obviously you've generated, almost 350 grand in revenue this year, which is pretty exciting. It sounds like all of your leads are generated from a very efficient source. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, sure. So I think, Todd, I'm pretty blessed to get into this e-commerce space before getting into real estate.
Right.
So I kind of had a understanding of how the digital marketing works. And when I learned about real estate, I said, hey, how about I just add these two together? And then I had an answer for that, which now we still run our lead generation through online. So that is primary source for us. I do good old bandit signs. We have done mailers. So there's some evergreen marketing campaigns that we run. And then we use technology. So we go out and do Google ads, Facebook paid ads, and we list properties in the marketplace, and that's where the world is. And now what we're trying to do at this point is we're trying to set up systems so how fast we can get to the motivated sellers or the buyers. So that's where my business currently right now is. We're tying up some processes around, how we get the lead, how we furnish it. If it's a cold lead, how we turn it into warm, and if it's not warm or hot lead, we put it back onto another channel where we're going to touch base with them, let's say every once or twice a month. And again, I used a lot of your techniques to squeeze those timelines. If somebody's saying, hey, they don't want to sell a property in a year, I try to squeeze it down to like 3 months. Okay, great, I understand you don't want to sell it, but what if I get back to you within a week or two? Is that fair? And usually that really works well. So I have a partner right now that I work in tandem with. And another thing I realized is I can't do it all. I have to bring somebody who understands it the way I do it or do it better. And then we leverage off each other. So I have a partner. We do some of the automation through, online sources where we get the leads in. And currently I'm doing all the acquisition stuff and also disposition. So at the disposition side of things, I work with a lot of other wholesalers in the city. And that's where, and it's been working great, but we're looking to pivot that and try to do most of it in-house going forward.
Well, one of the things I would say is everybody who's listening, and I always try to squeeze our guests for the information, right? So there's no hiding on this podcast. But you mentioned that you're getting a lot of online leads through your website also, right?
That's right.
right?
That's right.
And so, by the way, that's one of my favorite leads is getting leads through your website. They're the juiciest, fattest, easiest leads to convert. And so I always highly recommend that. Something that you also mentioned was that you actually are just working on a novation deal, right? Where you actually are getting a property under contract and selling it to a retail buyer, which I thought is really, really, really exciting.
That's right. I actually have two novation deals
Okay.
in pipeline.
So if you don't know a novation deal, if you're listening to this, that's where we get a property under contract, and instead of selling it to a cash buyer, we sell it to a retail buyer. The difference here is that you actually get the property under contract first with the seller, then you put the buyer and seller together, you step out, okay, and that transaction happens, but then you get paid the difference between your original agreement and what the new buyer and seller go for. So on those two deals, what do you expect those profits to be, Omar?
Combined
Well, each.
or okay. So my first deal, I'm expected to make about 65,000.
Oof.
And the other deal I have under contract, we are expected to make 30,000. And now that I'm thinking, I have another deal that's going under on the market in a couple of days. That one is the one with a very tight margin, and that one is expected to make about 40,000.
Okay, so now you're looking at about $140,000.
That's right.
Come on. Woo!
That's right. That's right.
That is awesome.
It's amazing.
So give me 3 tips, right? Someone who's listening to this, 3 tips for, it doesn't have to be 3, it could be between 1 and 3 of someone, the actions they need to take to propel themselves to success or get to the next level.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I can speak for myself and my experiences so far, and I think the top 3 things I can think of is network. Network with, whether it's like you said, brokers, agents, talk to as many people as possible. You don't know where you're going to find your next deal. It could be a neighbor, it could be a friend, it could be a wholesaler, it could be a multifamily investor who has a lot of money, and you're scared and you don't want to talk to them. You don't know what they're going to ask you. Just go out for lunch, ask them the questions, see where they're stuck in their business, and try to bring value where you can, and see how that can help them and help you, of course. So network is always the first thing that comes to my mind. Secondly is educate. Learn what's working right now in this market. I always like Wayne Gretzky's saying, like, go where the puck is going. Today doesn't matter. What matters is, where this is going to go in the next 6 months to a year. And if you position yourself, and that's the way I think in my business model, is if I can position myself today to what's coming, I'm going to be like way ahead of my competition. So I think the first one is to network. Second one is to, to kind of really educate yourself into what strategies and what tools do you need in today's market to get into real estate, whether it's a first deal or second or third deal. The third one is again, going back to the first point that I talked about, is know the numbers, know how to comp it, know what the comping criteria is. Know what the buyers are willing to pay, and sort of go backwards and work out the numbers. And if it doesn't work, move on to the next one really quick. Mm-hmm. This whole business, I'm learning, is it's as much as I don't like to say that it's everything is timing, but it is at the same time. It's about the timing, how fast you can get in. I mean, I've had situations where I've lost a deal literally by like 30 minutes. I was 30 minutes too late calling the seller, and they said, "Oh no, I had somebody else call me. We actually signed the contract and it's gone." I'm like, could have done that. So I always say, these 3 things, in my opinion, would be a good starting point for somebody who's starting out in this business.
Awesome. Well, I'll add to that last part, because you mentioned timing, right? I don't like timing. In that I don't like to have to rely on just being at the right place at the right time. So when you're consistently following up with your leads, right, you don't have to worry about timing because you're always there, right? That's one of the things I always tell my clients is like, don't rely on perfect timing because it's really hard to hit.
That's
But
right. That's right.
Omar, great show. I'm totally inspired. I mean, from putting pepperonis on pizza to almost, you know, you're trending towards $500,000 here. This is fantastic. I know that your business is going to explode here in the next year, and super excited for you. If you want to know more about novations, Brent Daniels and I have done a phenomenal training on novations. If you want to check that out, you can go to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/DTR, nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/DTR. Omar, where can people get a hold of you if they want to partner, if they want a JV, they want to do deals together, you're looking for a good team member, how could they find you?
So I'm mainly on Facebook and Instagram. On Facebook, you can look it up, Omar Tanweer, Omer. And my last name is Tanweer, Tanweer. And on Instagram, I think my name is Omar B.T. So I'm basically, I live in these two platforms, and I do a lot of business through Facebook. So feel free to reach out on Facebook.
Awesome. Omar, thank you so much.